Call this meeting to order. This is the January 10th, 2024 regular session of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 1 was the call to order. Item number 2 is to seat alternates. We have 2 joining us this evening, Commissioner Craig, Commissioner McMaster. Item number 3, hearing of residents. Anybody? Nobody? No emails? No, just nobody? Okay. All right, item number 4 is the consent agenda. There are 2 items on that agenda tonight. Item A is the corrected minutes for the November 15, 2023 regular meeting. Item B are the minutes for the December 13th, 2023 regular meeting. Commissioners, if there's no objection, I'd like to pull 4A for discussion. All right, so if we can have then the consent agenda now is a single item, 4B, the minutes for the December 13th, 2023 regular meeting. Can I have a motion to approve that consent agenda for 4B?
So moved.
All right, motion to approve from Commissioner McMaster. Have a second?
A second.
And a second from Commissioner Brown. There is no discussion on the consent agenda, so if you would please record your votes. All right, I see 6 votes, if we could publish that. We have 6 ayes and none opposed. That motion passes. All right, then, let's circle back to 4A, the corrected minutes for the November 15, 2023 meeting. It's just semantics, but I don't know if corrected is the right term or if we should call them amended. Anyway, I wanted to pull this because when you look, I don't know how many of you compared the corrected to the original. They're very minor changes. I think a couple of them, they inserted the word recommend approval because that's technically what we do. We don't actually approve things. And then there were a couple where they reworded things a little bit different, but I didn't feel comfortable without discussion. I wanted to just, in other words, we've got a couple of motions here by Commissioner Carbone, one by Commissioner Brown. So I just wanted to make sure those individuals were okay with these new words. So does anyone have any comments? And I know Commissioner Bro isn't here this evening, but looking at the amendment to his on item 5B, from my recollection, that's pretty much what was said. So I think he would be okay with it. So would someone like to make a motion to approve item 4A then, the corrected minutes for the November 15, 2023 meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
And if I can add the word as corrected, are you comfortable with that,
That's
Commissioner
corrected.
Carbone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions, comments? All right, if you would please record your vote. All right, I have 6 votes. Would you publish that, please? And 6 in favor and none opposed. So that motion passes. Thank you. All right, item 5B is public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing related to Unified Development Code amendments within this agenda. The public hearing will be open to receive a report from staff, the applicant, the adjoining property owners affected by the applicant's request, and any other interested persons. Upon completion, the public hearing will be closed. The commission will discuss and consider the application and may request additional information from staff or the applicant if required. After deliberation, the commission is asked to consider and act upon the following requests. and make a recommendation to City Council. All right. So item 5A, before we jump into that, I'd like to make sure the record reflects that Commissioner Goldick has recused herself from this item, and she is not among us here on the dais, okay? She felt the need to do this since it directly affects property she owns in the area, and she actually initiated some of these changes. So that's why she's not with us on the dais this evening. So 5A is PL UDC 2023-0276. Hold a public hearing, workshop, and discussion, and possible action to make a recommendation on amendments to Part 3 of the Schertz Code of Ordinances, Unified Development Code, to Article 5 zoning districts, Article 9 site design standards, and Article 14 transportation. Sam?
Thank you, Commissioners. PLUDC 2023-0276, Samuel Haas, Senior Planner. So a little background on these amendments here. The Main Street Committee feels that development on Main Street has been somewhat slow, and they have expressed desire for a little more flexibility with some of our standards in that zoning district.
Interrupt just a moment and see, can we get this up on our monitors up here?
Let me see if I can do that. Let me know if it's
We're
there.
still looking at the vote. There's the seal. There you go. Thank you.
We're good? Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. So as I was saying that the purpose of these amendments is to sort of make Main Street, the district, a little more flexible in terms of how we use it in the zoning districts and the restrictions and requirements there. Also running with these amendments, in reviewing stuff for Main Street, we saw that there's a lot of things in Article 5 that need some cleanup. Some districts we don't use, that don't even exist. And so we're running those together. Since we're already making adjustments to Article 5, we decided to help our UDC kind of look a little better as well. So there's 10 total sections in the UDC with these, or 10 total sections in the UDC for proposed amendments with this. And this is a list here of the sections that we will be proposing amendments to, mostly in Article 5, one in Article 9, and one in Article 14. So I'll start with the UDC cleanup, and it'll be these sections here in Article 5, and I'll walk you through what we're talking about here. So in 21.5.2, there's this table here that kind of prefaces the Article 5 section of the UDC. And as you go down the table, you'll see things like golf course district, agricultural conservation district, mixed use district. These districts don't exist anywhere in either on the ground or not anywhere in the UDC. Sometimes that you'll see something mentioned, and that's kind of in this proposed amendments as well, but we don't have a golf course district. We don't have an agricultural conservation district. The design overlay districts that you see towards the bottom, those were drafted into the UDC, but they were never followed through. They were never implemented into the city. It's kind of like a zone change. You have to go in and tell people that you have an overlay district. That just never happened. And these are relatively old at this point. I think these ran with the sector plan, which was in 2013. So staff feels that if it hasn't happened by now, probably not going to happen. So let's just, we're proposing to remove them from our UDC, clean things up a bit. And then at the very bottom, you see that we actually have a Main Street district called Main Street Mixed Use New Development. So that had to be added in to this zoning district established because those actually do exist. So they're actually on Main Street right now. So continuing along with this theme here, in 21.5.6, we have a statement of purpose for the golf course district. And so staff is proposing to essentially just scratch that. Just scratch H from the UDC. Also, in 21.5.7, we have this little key here at the bottom of this table. And what that key is referencing is a requirement for R4. And it used to be that our R4 parking standard requirements were 1.5 spaces per bedroom. Well, we had an amendment several months ago that passed. We increased that to, it's going to be 2 spaces per bedroom, 2 spaces per unit plus 5%. So we're actually adding that, or per bedroom, I'm sorry, adding that at the bottom. Here's a little snippet there from the UDC. So that's just going to match what's in our parking standards. It was just essentially just a little thing that we overlooked when we ran those amendments. So we're just correcting that right now. Moving on to 21.5, 12, 14, and 15. So these 3 districts we don't use. We have a whole section in our UDC. We haven't used them yet. We don't use them. We're not intending to use them now. Some of them are to the design overlay districts. Some of them you see are actually specific plan development districts. And now what we have instead is just a simple PDD that people come in and use. There's no agricultural conservation, there's no mixed use, it's just a PDD. One little caveat to that is that you see right here on the left side of the screen, there's 21.513, we have something called Estate Neighborhood Plan District. That is used in Halley's Cove, so we have to keep that. So we're gonna leave that in the UDC while the other ones we're scratching, and we're just gonna essentially say reserved here. So moving on, those are the cleanup portions of this. Moving on to Main Street. Main Street will have adjustments to 3 sections, Article 5, Article 9, and Article 14. Just to give you a little context of what we're talking about here, this is the Main Street incentive area. This is essentially where we're talking here. It's about 3,000 feet long, goes from Schertz Parkway down to Aviation Boulevard. Here's what our zoning map currently consists of. You'll see there's about, I think there's like 7, 8 parcels with Main Street mixed use and 2 with Main Street mixed use new development. There's 2 separate zoning districts on Main Street. So the first adjustment we're going to make is, or we're proposing to make, is to 21.5.5, and it's the statement of purpose and intent for residential districts. So we're adding some permitted uses to the Main Street districts, and so we are including some of that kind of narrative into this little paragraph here. And one of those is multifamily. So we're proposing to permit multifamily in Main Street. And I know everybody, when they hear multifamily, they think something crazy like this, right? But there are still height requirements. The parcels aren't very big. You know, there's flood zones. There's a lot of things that go into the Main Street that would restrict this kind of development. So what we're really kind of envisioning here is something more like this, or maybe like this, which this is 805 Main Street. So this already exists there, right? Going back to 21.5.7, we are essentially proposing to make the Main Street mixed use districts identical. And we think this would be a little bit easier to use for people. I think the Main Street mixed use district, Main Street mixed use new development was created for a very specific project that never materialized. So staff is proposing to essentially make these the same thing, just to keep Main Street all one cohesive area. And so what we're doing is we're matching the requirements from one to the other. And so you'll see that in Main Street mixed use, currently there's a 20-foot rear setback. Well, in Main Street mixed use new district, there's only a 10. So we're matching those. We're going down to 10 for both. In the minimum off-street parking spaces, you only need 2 for Main Street mixed use, but there's this long list of things for Main Street mixed use new district. We're just proposing to make those 2 each. And so we've added this little key here to H that says corner lots shall have a minimum 15-foot side yard setback from street right-of-way. Those are for corner lots. But for properties on Main Street, the city engineer may authorize a reduction to no less than 10 feet. So we're giving our engineering department a little bit of leeway there for special cases, just in case certain development challenges happen. And then down there, we're adding another note or another key to this we're calling it P here, and basically the Main Street mixed-use districts will now be subject to the requirements in 21-10-4. What this means is there are no more parking minimums. We're proposing that there won't be parking minimums on Main Street, except for the two. So you have a development on Main Street. What we're proposing is that you're only required to provide 2 parking spaces. So, also we're adding permitted uses, we're proposing to, in 21-5-8, and I'll walk you through these here. So, we're proposing a tattoo parlor and studio. This came directly from the Main Street Committee. This was something that they specifically thought would be okay, so we added it. Multifamily apartment dwelling, 1 family dwelling attached, private club, indoor theater. Now we're not thinking we're gonna get a Santikos out here, but maybe some sort of small theater, boutique-y, artsy, who knows. But we're gonna add that in there. 2 family dwelling duplexes. Automobile parking structure or garage. This could be, you know, if we're going to decrease the parking minimums on Main Street, maybe somebody will create a parking lot. We've always said that parking lots fall under this category, so that could be something too. We just wanted to include it, give it a little more flexibility. A microbrewery / brew pub. This is something that, you know, we don't actually have a current definition for this in the UDC. We have UDC amendments coming for like some other ones coming down the pipeline, most likely next month, that are going to be making adjustments to Article 16, which is our definition sections. Rather than doing multiple amendments to Article 16, we decided to run it all once, but we're going to add them in the permitted use table here. Pet store, that's already permitted in the new development portion of the Main Street mixed use, so we're deciding to match that. Just go ahead and permit it in Main Street mixed use as well. Municipal uses operated by the city of Schertz, and then dance hall, nightclub as well. So, kind of touching on what I mentioned before, the tattoo parlor and studio we're proposing with limited use. This is going to be in 21-5-8. And what it says is that no tattoo studio shall be within 900 feet of another tattoo studio. So if Main Street is around 3,000 feet long, most likely you're only going to get 2 at the maximum. And we did that on purpose because we didn't want a whole strip of tattoo studios. So there is some limited uses with that. And then, as I mentioned, with an upcoming separate amendment, the Article 16 definition to microbrewery and brew pub, this will be the word for word definition that we're going to be running, and it is a facility for the production and packaging of malt beverages for distribution, retail, or wholesale on or off premise. The development may include other uses such as a standard restaurant, bar, or live entertainment as otherwise permitted in the zoning district. So moving on to Article 9, our site design standards, some adjustments to landscaping. This goes back to the theme of matching the zoning districts to each other. So we already allow it in one, why not allow it in both to make a nice cohesive Main Street district, right? So there's a 20-foot wide landscape buffer that you're required in the UDC to provide at the front of your property along the public right-of-way, or really just on the public right-of-way. If your property is next to a public right-of-way, you need a 20-foot buffer. So we decided in a previous time that the Main Street mixed-use new development district wouldn't be required to abide by that. But our Main Street mixed-use district still would. So we're matching that. We're saying that neither does. And that helps with some of these properties that are on Main Street because they can be kind of tight, they're older. So some of those requirements make more sense in other part of the cities. The interior parking lots, you know, if we're eliminating parking minimums, we're saying that if you do want to have a parking lot, you know, they're not large parcels, so we're not going to make you put in parking islands and parking rows and things like that. So the interior landscaping requirements for parking lots, we're going to exempt Main Street mixed use from that and the new development as well. Touching on this a little bit more, the perimeter landscaping section of the UDC. Now, what we see here is that when you have a residential use or zoning next to a non-residential use or zoning, you're required to have a 20-foot landscape buffer and an 8-foot masonry fence. And staff felt that if we're trying to create a cohesive district and make something that's a little more flexible, having residential uses and commercial uses separated by masonry walls would probably not be good for that. So, and also because of the restrictions on some of these older parcels and how small they can be, taking 20 foot off of one side or both on some occasions really shrinks the usability of your lot. So we decided to exempt Main Street from those buffering requirements and also from the masonry 8-foot fence that you're required to put up. And then the last section is in Article 14, and this is some additional requirements. Basically, if you're against your building setback line against a public right-of-way is typically 50 foot. We've decided that the Main Street Mixed Use New Development District is already exempt from that, so we're matching and we're just doing the Main Street Mixed Use. We're gonna have that match. So those are both exempt from that 50-foot building setback on the public right-of-way. Screening and buffering, again, this is for principal or secondary arterials. Basically, you're required to have an 8-foot masonry fence. We've decided to just say, if you're in Main Street, you don't have to do that either. That's what we're proposing. So as I mentioned, these amendments would provide the flexibility for Main Street. We think that some of this would help incentivize development, at least create a little more flexibility there. We also feel that these amendments would help create a cohesive and unique Main Street, something that I think we've all been wanting in the city. And staff is recommending approval of these amendments to the Unified Development Code as proposed and discussed.
All right, thank you, Sam. I guess we really don't have an applicant. This is an internally generated
Yep.
thing. But this is a public hearing, so it is now 6:21 PM, and I'll open it for public input. Yeah, nobody's here tonight, okay. Well, give me a time to make some notes here. All right, it is now 6:22 PM, and I'll close the public input session. Commissioners, discussion, comments?
So all of the recommended changes, have they been, or were they, I should say, vetted and approved or what have you by the Main Street Committee?
The Main Street Committee wanted the setbacks, wanted the buffering, all those exemptions. Staff took the liberty to add more permitted uses to the permitted use table, but they specifically asked for tattoo parlors. So staff felt that, well, we're already adding some uses or adding a use, so why not add a few more? And so to answer your question, not 100% of these have been cleared by the Main Street Committee, but I would say about 60% of these, 70% of these were.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have another question. So I would then assume, based on staff's recommendation, that the recommended changes are in line with the vision for Main Street.
That's correct.
Okay.
We feel that they asked for some specific things and we kind of ran with that in line with what we feel that they were going for. So.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I have mixed feelings about what we're trying to do here. I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at history about how I voted in terms of Main Street mixed-use new development. When I look at what we're trying to do, I certainly see the issues that are facing those lots that are zoned Main Street mixed use. We're trying to take an existing structure sitting on a piece of property. You know, you can't move the structure, so you've got to work with what you've got. And I can understand where that might be a little difficult. But when I look at Main Street mixed-use new development, you're coming into that project with your eyes open. You're not trying to reuse an existing structure. You know, in at least one case, you buy a vacant lot, or you've bought a lot and destroyed the structure, and now you're going to build a brand new one. I don't see that as being the same situation. To me, I put that in the same boat with other developers coming in here asking for PDDs because they can't meet our requirements and make their project work. And there's been a lot of pushback lately about doing those kinds of things, letting them have smaller lots, less parking, you know, all these things. We make these rules, and then we want to turn around and change them because they don't work for the developers. Could you put your new permitted uses slide back up there? What would you envision a parking structure or a parking garage? What would you envision that looking like on Main Street?
So what I'll say is that we have surface parking lots on Main Street. And we have traditionally interpreted a surface parking lot to fall under this category. So the reason for adding this to permitted use was if somebody else wanted to create another surface parking lot, we would permit it. That was do we envision a big parking structure? No, but we wanted to provide flexibility to the district.
You know, a surface parking lot, you know, certainly they're down there now and they make a lot of sense, but you know, a couple sessions ago, we no longer can, you know, we've lost a lot of architectural control in terms of materials and stuff. And, you know, I'm really not sure what the Main Street Committee is trying to do down there. You know, I think, you know, they're trying to revitalize the area and turn it into, you know, a place for residents and out-of-towners to eat and you know, eat and drink and be merry and more power to them. But part of my problem with the whole Main Street thing is you know, it includes those properties on what I would call the south side of, is that Exchange? What is that next street up? So now, you know, we've already got some people, you know, we've got some people that are living in their houses. This, you know, they're not trying to turn their house into a restaurant or a barbecue pit or anything else. And yet, now we're going to let the guy behind them push his activity to within 10 feet of their rear property line. So, you know, it's a sticky thing down there. And then again, with new development, I don't know, were we trying to stick with the rustic look? That's probably the wrong term, but in other words, are we trying to preserve what's there, or would we just as soon tear everything down and build a whole new entertainment district down there? Yeah, and you know, so what I envision when you say parking structure garage, I see this minimum 2-story gray concrete monstrosity plunked down on Main Street somewhere. And I'm not sure that's what we're looking for. Surface parking, sure. Okay. Who else?
So just to piggyback on that, a couple things come to mind. So obviously there was a vision for Main Street in the beginning, right? I see this as providing more latitude for the development and future development of what Main Street would look like. I guess I'm not adept to what other approvals would need to take place before something like a parking structure would be approved to be built. Say the surface parking lot that's across the street from the Purple Pig right now. If the owner of that particular property said, you know, hey, I'd like to, well, I don't know how they could do it. There's not enough room, but if they wanted to make a multi-level structure for parking, what would go into the approval process to actually have that done? And I know engineering would be involved, but I do see the additions as providing more latitude. And if you all say that it is in line with the vision for Main Street for the city, I don't know. I don't see it being problematic. I mean, anything could be, right? But certainly there are things in place to kind of govern what that would ultimately look like. So.
Yeah, so so I would say that for the parking garage, I think, I don't know exactly, but I'm just gonna make some generalizations here. I think the economics of engineering and constructing a large parking structure would stipulate minimum number of spaces to justify the expense of building all that, right? And staff doesn't feel that that is likely on Main Street. I think our motivation for putting this in was because we wanted to provide opportunity for surface parking lots. And if it's an issue, the actual term of structure or garage, then perhaps we could include a new definition and a new use of surface parking lot if the commission wants to, if this is that much of a sticking point. But traditionally in the city, we have determined that, you know, automobile parking structure or garage, we would consider a surface parking lot under that, so.
And then for the private residences adjacent to or on the backside of the Main Street district properties, quite honestly, I had a question about that 2 years ago, and how it even got approved without that being a consideration at that time. So I can only assume that, you know, the owners of that property, I think they might have shown up at a previous meeting, but to me, that would have always been a concern, you know, knowing that those residences were right there on the backside. And so now if you take any type of entertainment outside, even though there's a fence around it, you know, the noise is going to travel. So, and I don't know if the Main Street Committee considers that or takes that into any consideration, but that, to me, if I owned the property or lived there, that would be a little disconcerting, so.
Well, I agree with you, Sam. I don't see, if a multi-story or if a parking garage was going to be built on Main Street, I think it would almost have to be a city project. So I agree with you. I don't see Mr. Marquez or Ms. Goldick or any of the other owners there on Main Street stepping up, because that's, would be a pretty big expense. I could see the city doing it someday. It was a real struggle just getting staff to realize that parking requirements on Main Street are a different beast than Walmart or H-E-B or some new construction, okay? So I think we've certainly recognized that, and we see a couple of changes here recognizing that fact. But I just picked that one because looking at the list, that's the ugliest thing I could think of going in down there. Yeah, I had another thought, but I unfortunately didn't write it down. So you may have gotten lucky tonight. No, again, I haven't been to, I went to some of the early Main Street Committee meetings, and I haven't been to one in quite a while. The problem was they used to be after the council meetings, and shoot, you're already you've been there so long, you don't want to stay for another hour or two. But we have some things, when I say we, I mean the city, we have some things down there, some kind of, I don't know what the word to use, but we're going to put some lamp posts. We're going to redo the street lighting down there in a more heritage or rustic style. I think at one they were talking about landscaping and maybe some street art. I think the original intent of Main Street Committee was when we look at what Cibolo has done over with their Main Street there with Harmon's Barbecue, and there's a bakery over there, there's a restaurant, much smaller scale, I think, than what we're trying to do over here. But I'm always, again, to me, Main Street mixed use is one bag of worms, okay? New development is a totally different, it's new development. Some of the changes you want to make, building setbacks and things like that, I don't have a lot of concern about those, because if it's a commercial use, a commercial structure, there's a whole bunch of building and fire codes that apply that take into account those reduced setbacks. So, okay. Anybody else? John?
I'm happy to hear this. And the reason I am happy to hear this is because I've lived here about 8 years, and I've probably spent thousands in Cibolo, going to their Main Street, 1908, Kindling, Rooted Fork, all of the shops, and I would love to stay in Schertz and keep that money here. And when I first heard about them developing Main Street, this was years ago, I was like, yes, can't wait. And it slowly happened. We had the Bar House, we had the Purple Pig come up, and I was like, yes. And Americana came open, and then it kind of just fizzled from there. I can understand the property owners wanting some more leeway so they can develop the properties. I'm all for it. As far as the residents that live there, I think the writing has been on the wall for years that area is turning over. And if I owned a property there, I would be looking to sell it to a developer and leave. Let's be honest. A lot of the individuals in Cibolo had the same issue, and they cashed out and left. Not to say that I'm callous to someone wanting to stay in their property. That's not it, but it's economics. And everyone's got a price. The individuals who lived down on 1518 who said they would never sell their farms have sold their farms and left. And so I can't wait to be able to go to a microbrewery on Main Street instead of going to Gather in UC, even though I really like Gather, okay? And so I'm all for a lot of these changes. That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? That's great. Oh,
It's pretty similar to that. I love that you guys are taking the initiative to do this. along with Cibolo, I've seen Seguin. They've also been doing a lot of development. With that, though, I was curious, have you seen, by allowing this, extending the permits and all that, has that been proven effective, or is that something people have done in the past? Is this something you've like researched and looked into, basically? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think when you see other main streets and you see that they allow attached structures and they've eliminated parking minimums and they've done like that, so it creates a more walkable area, a little more friendly for that retail sort of leisure entertainment experience. So I think that was the research we did and sort of the motivation behind a lot of this stuff.
Well, I think I've mentioned it before. You know, we live in the city of Schertz, but it's not your typical city layout. You know, where you drive through downtown and then you know, we've got a little bit of downtown over here on Main Street, and then everything else is up on the interstate. It's just not your typical city layout. If nobody has anything else, we have some options that you can consider. This was a workshop, a discussion, and then possible action. We don't have to take action tonight. That's one option. The other option is if you would like to suggest changes in the staff presentation, we can do that and have them come back. We can recommend approval to City Council with changes. We can just recommend approval as it's presented, or we can recommend denial. So if somebody would, you know, those are kind of the options as I see them. So if someone would, if we don't have any more discussion, if somebody would like to make a motion, and again, please, to save Tiffany some work, if you would include the word recommend in your motion.
I recommend that we approve the UDC changes as written.
We have a motion to recommend approval as presented by staff. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. I have a motion from Commissioner Carbone to recommend approval, second from Commissioner McMaster. Any further discussion? All right, they're anxious. If you would, please record your votes. All right, I see 6 votes. If we could publish that. We have 6 in favor, none opposed. That motion passes. Thank you all. All right, moving right along. Item number 6 is request and announcement. 6A, request by commissioners to place items on a future planning and zoning agenda. Anybody? 6B, announcements by commissioners. Anybody? I'm going to remind the commissioners that our next meeting is not until February 7th. Okay, we are now only meeting once a month. So if you show up 2 weeks from now, you're going to be here by yourself. Right, Sam?
That's correct.
All right, February 7th is our next meeting. City staff, you have anything?
So I'll piggyback on that. February 7th is going to be a 5:30 start time. It is our CPAC number 4, which is our Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. I will be reaching out to y'all and giving y'all basically a draft plan ahead of time, and giving y'all at least a couple weeks to really look that over, because it's a pretty meaty document at this point. So, but we're pretty far along in the process. So just want to lay that out there. 5:30. Mm-hmm. And then staff has 3 more announcements. We've recently approved 3 plats. We have approved a preliminary plat for the Carrillo lot This is the mobile mini property up on Interstate 35. It is a 11.72 acre preliminary plat that was approved. We've also approved a replat for the lot for Cal Stone in 2 lots 5 and 6, and this is
All
going
right,
to
can I interrupt again?
can't see it?
No, I can't see it here. Looking at the city seal, there you go. So would you mind backing up to, there you go. Thank you.
Carrillo plat. This was a preliminary plat that was recently approved, 11.72 acres, up on Interstate 35.
Right.
The Cal Stone replat, 3.7 acres, that was recently approved. This is the Kellum Medical Area, up on 3009. And a final plat for the Palapus John subdivisions, lots 1 and 2. This is 3.34 acres, up on Interstate 35 as well, in Schertz Parkway, or near Schertz Parkway, I should say. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. And of course, commissioners, these are not discussion items, but if you'd like to take a better look at them or talk to staff, you can see them after the meeting. Item number 7 is information available in the P&Z packets. 7A is current projects and city council status update. Unfortunately, that's out of date because council met last night and took some actions. So I don't know, but you're always welcome. You know, you can go out there and watch the city council meeting on YouTube if you're curious how certain things turned out. Okay, it is now 6:46, and there is no further business. This meeting is adjourned.